NFL superstar Aaron Rodgers attacking one of the nation's top vaccine experts. The New York Jets quarterback posting this image of Dr. Peter Hotez on Instagram saying, quote, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would mop this bum. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, is running for president. He's a vocal vaccine skeptic. Rogers' post comes after Dr. Hotez criticized RFK Jr. After a podcast he did with Joe Rogan. And in that podcast, Kennedy repeatedly pushed unfounded claims about vaccines, and he called out Dr. Hotez by name.
Nobody will debate me. For 18 years, nobody will debate me. I've asked Hotez many, many times to debate me. I've debated Hotez on the telephone with, with kind of a referee, and his science is just made up. He cannot stand by it. He can't cite studies.
All right, Rogan then, after all of this, comes out and tweets at Dr. Hotez. And he tweets, quote, Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. And then Elon Musk jumps in, tweeting, quote, of Hotez, he's afraid of a public debate because he knows he's wrong. And Dr. Hotez is now out front. And Doctor, there's a lot I wanted to talk to you about this, a lot of layers. But let me just start with where we are at this moment. You're now dealing with personal threats, stalking from anti-vaxxers. How is this situation different than anything you faced before?
I think it has to do with the volume, the intensity, and the fact that now people are coming to my home. I've been going up against anti-vaccine groups for a couple of decades because I have a daughter with autism and wrote a book, Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, about my daughter. But what's happened over the last few years, it's become, the movement is still continues around autism, but it's shifted to become more of a political movement, and it's better organized, it's better funded, it's politically motivated. And I think that's what you're seeing now, this play out in a very organized fashion that's really troubling and extremely aggressive, and at times pretty scary.
I can only imagine. And look, the reality of this is part of the reason this is in the conversation is that for now a couple months, RFK Jr. has been polling around 20% in various polls as a challenger to President Biden for the Democratic nomination, right? So that's why people are so focused on him, right? And yet he is perhaps, he has done a lot of environmental work in his career, but perhaps best known for what he has chosen to make his central statement, right? Which is claims about vaccines. And here he is on the COVID vaccine.
As we all now recognize, the COVID vaccines were neither safe nor effective. If you got vaccinated, you're more likely to get sick, you're more likely to get severe illness, and you're more likely to die than if you were unvaccinated.
Those things are not true. I should just, right, Dr. Hotez, those things are simply not true. And you mentioned the book that you wrote about your daughter, right? She has autism, and you wrote a book explaining why vaccines are not the cause of that. So this whole debate comes up that Rogan's saying, do this debate, give $100,000 to charity. And you've had time to think about it. What's the reason that you don't think that that is worthwhile?
Well, I've had, as Bobby, which is what I would call him when I would be speaking with him, would rightly points out, we've had a number of conversations, especially in the year 2017, when he announced he was going to be appointed to head a special commissioner on vaccines, and I began speaking with him actually at the request of the National Institutes of Health, and it was an exercise in frustration because I did cite studies and in-depth studies, and in fact, I put it all together in a book, The Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism. But it was frustrating because he would keep on moving the goalposts. I mean, initially it was about the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine that was said to multiply in the colon, and somehow that led to autism, and that was debunked with large epidemiological studies. And then it was shifted to thimerosal preservative, and he was a big proponent of that in the 2000s. And then when that got debunked, it was spacing vaccines too close together, and they talked about this concept of greening vaccines. And then it was albumin vaccines, and then it wasn't even about autism anymore. It was something called chronic illness. So it was it's always kind of this pair game of whack-a-mole or moving the goalposts, and that's what it would be like if I went on Joe Rogan. It's
Right.
not productive to do it, and in some ways it kind of sets the whole field back.
So let me quickly ask you to that point, Elon Musk, right? He said you're afraid to debate RFK Jr. because you know you are wrong. Now, I should just note that Musk hosted Kennedy for a Twitter Spaces forum. He has more followers than any other human alive on Twitter, 144 million. He is the richest person in the world. People pay attention to him. And he's, just to state the obvious, an intellectually formidable and successful person. How impactful is it that he's saying these types of things?
Well, remember, between RFK Jr., Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk, pretty much that's every follower on Twitter. So that's a big space. Look, I've said multiple times to Joe Rogan. I was on twice on his show. I said I'll come back anytime you want, especially during that Delta wave when he was inviting some anti-vaccine activists, and I thought that was doing some damage. I said, let me come on, Joe. I'll talk to you and explain why vaccines are effective, why they're safe, and why they'll save your lives. But he ignored those emails. I wrote to him in 2021, 2022, and then I finally gave up. With Elon Musk, I said, look, I'll come on whatever Twitter format you want to use and have that discussion with him. But in terms of RFK Jr., I've been there, done that. I've had multiple discussions with him. They don't go anywhere. He doesn't really understand the science behind vaccines and doesn't really understand the science of autism. And so I think it would just, and he doesn't really want to listen. And so therefore, I think it would be highly unproductive.
Well, Dr. Hotez, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.